Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Chris Mitchell, Senior Solution Engineer here at Inflow CX. I'll be leading today's webinar talking about the FCC deregulation of analog POTS lines. If you're new to our webinar series, or feel free to hit our website. We have an upcoming webinar next week on the top 3 most common challenges for contact centers, and then we're getting ready to post all of our February webinars as well. So if you have a chance, take a look at the when we get the upcoming ones posted, and register for any of them that that look good. We transition to my next slide here for everybody. All right, quick agenda. I'm going to talk about real quick about who is Inflow CX. Then I'll jump right into the deregulation conversation. Then I'll save a little time at Q&A at the end. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the in the question section. I have that up on my second screen here, so I can see those questions. I'll try to answer them as I'm going. That way, at the I don't have to get to them all at the end. But if there's some questions I don't get, I'll get to them at the end, or I'll follow up via email, or if I need to as well. And then at the very end, I'll show you a contact us page. So if you have future questions or something like that, or you want to have a conversation with a sales engineer or something, or with your account manager, you'll have information how to contact us as well. All right, so who is Inflow CX? So we're an innovative provider of advisory, deployment, and managed services. We focus in the contact center, customer experience, and unified communication. So a lot of customers who've been with us a long time know us from our ShoreTel Mitel days. When we've fully kind of transitioned into the contact center, customer experience, and unified communication space to kind of broaden our horizons and provide more services to our customers. So we help organizations, with guidance, execution, optimizations of their customer engagement strategy. So we have a full consulting team, that can help you evaluate, your customer experience and ROI, needs and stuff like that. Our expertise is customer experience, UC, CCaaS for contact center, workforce management, workforce optimization, AI, automation, analytics, all those kind of, factors that drive customer engagement and the technologies and services around those. We do have a vendor-neutral approach for in the customer experience, for technology evaluation, labor strategies, and operational effectiveness. So that's what our whole consulting team does. They'll help you evaluate all your needs, and figure out, okay, are your labor, you have labor shortages, do you need outsource people to come in and help you out, do you need answering services to help you out after hours, is there technology to help you with scheduling, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of different ways that we can help customers going forward with their customer experience capabilities. We have over 75 employees now, over 1,000 customers, over 500 contact center, installs, 1,000 UC installs, and over 300 contact center engagements. So some of the accolades, and products that we work with. So we're Five9 Sales Partner of the Year, Genesys Implementation Partner of the Year, NICE CX1, MicroSI Partner, and Platinum. So those are the 3 biggest contact center partners out there. Then Zoom Certified Implementation Partner and RingCentral Preferred Partner. So those are the 2 biggest UC, kind of cloud UC players out there. So we kind of partner with, all the major players out there in the industry. Some of our customers, we span all different types of companies and all different types of sizes. You'll probably see some companies that you recognize on there. And last page here is just some of the technologies that we work with from the contact center space. Genesys, Five9, NICE. Those are the 3 biggest players out there. But Twilio, UJET, Talkdesk, Avaya. At the very bottom, the UCaaS players, RingCentral, Zoom, Fuse, 8x8, Nextiva, Dialpad. We do a lot of integrations with Teams. We don't deploy Teams or anything like that, or support Teams, but we do a lot of integrations, with Teams. And then kind of in the middle, these are our ecosystem. These integrate with, either contact center or UC players. So workforce management, quality analytics, AI and agent assist, some of the major players out there as well. So if you have any needs around anything around customer experience, that's kind of what we're here for, to help customers guide that and evaluate different solutions. All right, well, we're going to hop right in, and start talking about, FCC deregulation. So a lot of our customers, I've had this conversation since August, with customers. So the carriers have been, trying to get customers off of analog lines for years and years and years. Some carriers completely discontinued the service years ago. A lot of them are still offering it. Well, So now that the FCC deregulation happened on August 2nd, I was trying to think the date real quick. I had to look at my notes here. What that really so the deregulation happened on August 2nd, 2022. So really, what does deregulation mean? So what that is that's when the FCC stopped regulating what telephone companies can charge, for those lines, and also stopped requiring them to maintain the analog, copper analog lines, network, in those services, stuff like that. So they gave them a 3-year kind of, the FCC gave them kind of 3-year notice in 1999 that they're, or 2019 that they're going to, stop the deregulation or stop that. And then once that happened, that's not the end of services or anything like that. It's just the end of the regulation around those services. So that means that pricing isn't guaranteed anymore. They don't, once your contract is up, if you're month to month or anything like that, the pricing on those services are no longer, required to be, to stay what they were, and there's no regulations around, increases and stuff like that for those lines. So does that mean analog lines are going away? Short term, no, but long term, yes. So, with with the deregulation, everything like that, there's no price caps on them and everything like that. So they're trying to maintaining those all those lines, that copper network, the routers and everything, that's used to maintain those services. No other service that the carriers offer utilize those copper lines or utilizing those copper lines anymore. They're doing the same thing with PRIs and copper PRIs. They're forcing everybody to move to SIP PRIs, off of copper PRIs because they're trying to maintain, the copper infrastructure gets too expensive. A lot of that copper was laid a long time ago. Some of these carriers have copper that was, installed 100 years ago and they're still maintaining it, on that side of things. So, they don't want to maintain it anymore. So, they're starting to force, customers off of those, the copper services, either just straight discontinuing it or by doing price increases, in order to kind of force the customer, to get off of those analog lines. So what are the biggest use cases, for analog lines? Obviously, faxing, but a lot of customers ask, what should I do with if I have like a analog door phone or a fax machine or, security alarm in elevators. Those are the kind of the security alarm in elevators are the big ones that you can't really hook to, a phone system or a cloud, a cloud phone system or something like that. Those are usually the big ones that we've always talked about not hooking up, to the system. So, what should we do with those security and elevator lines and everything like that? So one of our biggest customers is ThyssenKrupp Elevators. They're actually, they've been, knowing this is coming, so they've been working on upgrading most of their elevators to use cellular, phone lines now, to use a cellular connection, so that way if somebody pushes the call button in an elevator, it rings out to the call center, but it rings over the cellular network rather than the analog network. Some of them also have the elevators support SIP trunking now, so you can register it as a SIP device, and just so it doesn't need an analog line there, to be able to to utilize calling from an elevator. The same thing with the security and alarm. A lot of them have moved to a 4G or 5G cell network option, so you can they can still place calls. The other nice advantage of that is if somebody is trying to break into a building. One of the old things they used to always do is they would go outside and they would cut the phone line connection to the building. That way, the security and alarm systems couldn't call out outbound when when they break into the building. So moving to a cellular backup for security and alarm gets rid of that capability where they cut that, or if they cut the power to the building or something like that, they always have a battery backup in in those units, so they can still place an outbound call if the power goes out in those cases as well. So those are I would say those are the most common things, but there's a couple of options that some of the carriers are also starting to offer, and they call like analog in a box or phone system in a box or ATA or SBC or something like that. And what it is they'll bring in a SIP service to your building. They'll drop a little box, a little Adtran box or a little little Cisco box or something that can do it. That can do a split out ATA from audio codes or something. And what that does is that brings a SIP connection into your building. and then that box actually splits out that SIP connection to analog connections, and then you could run those analog connections to, you know, fax machines, security alarm, you know, elevator, you know, door phones, you know, access control, you know, doors and stuff like that as well. So you can still get analog devices connected to it, but then that box converts it over to SIP, and then because, you know, then it connects back to the, you know, the carrier as a SIP connection rather than analog connection, and that kind of gives you a way to, you know, still have some of those analog devices, but not have, you know, be on the copper analog network anymore, so that you know, the carriers can still, you know, continue to, you know, to get rid of those, you know, that copper infrastructure and stuff that they're managing. So there's a couple providers that we know of, and that, you know, that we've worked with that do that. So if you have some needs or some interest in that, you know, feel free to reach out to us. You know, we're more than happy to kind of do an introduction to a couple of the carriers that offer that service. You know, even do a call, you know, with them and one of our engineers to kind of talk through, you know, your needs and stuff with the carrier. You know, so you can look at that. So the biggest question usually people ask us is, okay, well, what if I, you know, I'm still using analog lines, and, you know, what if I, you know, what is my price going to go up? You know, is it, you know, if they're going to tell me off of the service, you know, are they going to increase my price by $1, by $1,000, whatever? So there's one carrier that I was talking with a customer in California, and they increased, you know, since August, they've increased their prices 800% on analog lines. So if you're not paying attention to your bills, start paying attention to your bills. If they're on auto pay or something like that, and your accounting team is just paying your, you know, those phone bills, start paying attention, start pulling those bills, start auditing those bills. Tell your accounting team to send you a copy of that bill every single month before they pay it, because we are seeing price increases, you know, pretty much on every single analog line. The typical average price going up since August is about 50%. So if you're paying $50 a month, you know, say in July, most people we're seeing are paying $75 a month now. So the price increase on average is about 50%, but in certain areas where they don't want to maintain those lines anymore, we're seeing dramatic increases. We've had a couple customers reporting that they're getting a price increase every single month. It's a rolling price increase. So, you know, this month the first month it was $50, you know, then it goes to $60, $70, $80, $90, and they're just, you know, just doing rolling price increases, you know, every single month on those. So like I said, if you're not paying attention, you're not auditing those phone bills, start auditing them right now, because, you know, in a matter of 6 months, you know, those prices can be dramatically higher than they were 6 months ago. So make sure you're auditing those if you're not already. A lot of our customers, you know, we have a lot of school district customers, you know, universities and stuff like that, colleges that use analog lines, you know, for backup purposes, for DR purposes. You know, that's in a lot of use cases. That's what they're used for. So a lot of customers ask me, okay, well, if we're not going to be using analogs for our backup lines, you know, going forward or something like that, or for DR purposes, you know, what's our best options, you know, for backup and DR purposes? So I'll give you a use case scenario, like a school district. They'll put an analog line at every single school, and then they'll use that analog line either as the primary 911 caller ID line, or as the backup in case, you know, they can't connect to the, you know, the SIP trunks or something, you know, at the district office. So in that case, you know, another way to handle that would be to, you know, you could bring in SIP service to every single school. It'd be kind of expensive. That would definitely be more expensive if we brought in, you know, dial tone trunking to every single school. So another use case would be, instead of just having all your dial tone at one location, let's do dial tone at 2 different locations. So, you know, maybe, you know, we'll keep the school district, you know, kind of scenario going. So instead of just putting all your dial tone at the district office, maybe pick one of the high schools and put some dial tone there. So that way you have 2 different locations that we have dial tone at. So if for some reason the elementary school can't reach the district office, if it can reach the high school, then it can still place an outbound call, you know, to 911, you know, for services there. Another way to do it, another way to provide additional redundancy there is provide dial tone from 2 different carriers. So if we're worried about, you know, let's just say Verizon having an outage, you know, if all of our dial tone is with Verizon, okay, yeah, we do have a single point of failure there. So maybe let's put Verizon as our primary dial tone at one location at the district office, and maybe at the high school, let's put it AT&T. You know, that way we're on 2 different carrier networks, you know, completely separated. That way, you know, if one carrier has a major outage, it's not affecting, you know, the second one. We can still place outbound calls. We can have inbound calls failed over, you know, between carriers. for redundancy purposes there. So we can always make sure we can place outbound calls for 911 purposes, or receive inbound calls or something like that. So I would say that's the most common. You could still use PRIs as well. You don't necessarily have to use SIP trunks, but like I said before, a lot of our carriers are trying to get rid of PRIs, just like they're trying to get rid of analog lines, to free up that if they're copper PRIs, they want to stop maintaining that PRI infrastructure, as well. So a lot of our providers are already forcing customers over to SIP PRIs, which is they bring in SIP, they drop a little Adtran box on site, that Adtran box converts it back to PRI, and you plug that right back in your phone system, just like you did your copper PRI. So there's no change in your phone system to receive a SIP PRI or a copper PRI. It's the same setup in the phone system. It's simply plug and play, and you're good, when you're ready to go on that. If you're making a change between SIP PRI and a copper PRI, it's simply unplugging one and plugging the other one in. So, you could utilize, a SIP PRI to, kind of as a redundancy option to your analog lines as well, to provide you some additional redundancy. If you really want individual trunking at every single location, to replace a true, analog line, then we can use some of those, like phone system in a box options that we were talking about with the security, in alarm and some, those fire system options. Is they bring in a SIP service. Maybe they bring in a couple, 5 lines or something like that. And you run one into the phone system as your analog 911 line, and you run a couple others too, like alarm system, fire, or like fax machine or something like that as well, as an option. So we can't do traditional analog lines, but we can still do those SIP analog lines, as an option, so we can still get dial tone at every single location. And based on what the price of the analog lines going up to, utilizing those SIP analog line options really won't be much more expensive, because analog lines prices are going up. So it makes it a little easier for us to replace those with another service, because the prices has went up. It's not as cheap as it used to be going forward. Let's see here. I'm going to answer a couple of questions here. So somebody asked, what's their recommendation for fax machines? So if you have analog fax machines still connected to the system, there's a couple of easy options there. The first option would be you could just connect that fax machine to your phone system. So if you still have an on-site phone system or even a cloud-based phone system, connect that fax machine as an extension off your phone system. That's option number one. If you have a cloud-based phone system, you're going to need an ATA, or an analog telephone adapter. And what that device does is it's a little, it can be, a tiny little box, that's like, 4 inches by 4 inches, or it can be a bigger box depending on how many connections we need. And what it does is it plugs into your internet, your network in your office, so it gets internet access, and then it reaches out and connects to, let's just say, Zoom, RingCentral, 8x8, Dialpad, any of those cloud providers. Registers as an extension, and then it gives you an analog port, so you can then plug in a fax machine, to that little device, or 2 fax machines, something like that. And then you can, still use analog, regular fax machines, or even like the copiers that support fax. You can plug one of those into it as well, and then you can have traditional, faxing in your office by using an ATA. So that's probably the easiest way. Boom, you're going to pay a small fee, on your phone system, either to have an extension license or something like that, or or a hardware, to connect that. But it's fairly easy. Second option would be, this is what I would say a lot of our customers are going to, is eFax. So port all your fax numbers to an eFax provider in the cloud, and then that eFax provider receives all the faxes, and then they deliver them via a PDF to email boxes. So every user can have their own. You get a department level, and then all you simply do when you need to send a fax is anything you got to get that document to your computer, and once it's on your computer, you can simply fax it out, either via an application, a website, or via Outlook, for sending out those outbound faxes. So I would say that's how the bulk of our customers are moving, is towards the eFax direction, so they can get rid of, those physical fax machines and stuff. But we know that those aren't completely going away in the medical space, even the education space and the financial space. So if you have those multifunction fax machines, copy machines, drop the document on there, scan it to your computer, email it over to you. Then once it's on your computer, you can simply fax that, to, a destination, as needed there as well. Let's see. Another question here says, what if I have analog lines in a rural area? So this is probably I would say one of the exceptions to this analog lines going away is if you have a small carrier. I'm just going to give you an example. One of our customers is in Eastern Washington, and they have a really small telephone carrier. I don't remember the community, more communications or more telecom. Some small family-owned telecommunications company or carrier, and we actually tried to migrate this customer to the cloud off of an on-prem system, and that carrier won't release the numbers to RingCentral or Zoom. So they can't port those numbers up and use a cloud system because that carrier won't release the phone numbers. They won't sell the numbers. They're kind of forcing the customer to stay with that carrier. Well, they have some analog lines, through that carrier, one of the locations, and we actually had a conversation with this carrier about 60 days ago, and they're not getting rid of analog lines in their rural areas because they don't have fiber deployed in the rural areas yet to replace the analog lines. So if you happen to be, a company who has, some remote locations or something like that, those locations are probably okay for now until the carriers come up with a backup plan or a secondary option for you. Another use case, like one of our customers deals in hazardous waste, everything like that. So they have really remote locations. Some of those locations, will have had analog lines. Some we've actually switched to SIP over like satellite internet, because satellite internet is getting more stable now. So that's another option, is depending on what your internet connection you can get at those locations. We can switch over to to maybe a satellite based internet and then use SIP over a satellite internet in some of those rural areas. But if the carrier is a rural based carrier, they're probably not they're not maintaining hundreds and thousands of miles of copper, so they're probably not looking to to force people off of those copper lines yet. Let's see here. Another question here is somebody asked if they could hook up security alarm and elevator lines to their phone system. So we hook up elevator lines to our phone systems all the time. That's we've been doing that for years. As an option there, hooking elevators up to the phone system. That's a pretty easy standard process. Same as a fax machine for that. We've always kind of pushed back on fire alarm and security, is saying don't hook these to your phone system, because if your phone system has an issue, you don't want that to stop those systems from being able to call out or something like that. But now that analog lines are going away, my recommendation would be yes, we can hook those to the system, but my recommendation would be is to look at getting those systems upgraded to support a cellular network as well. So that way you have two kind of, maybe the phone system is the backup connection for those systems. They use a cell phone network first, and then they use the phone system as the backup option. If the cellular network for some reason is having an issue or not being able to connect, then it'll place the call outbound. And the main reason is because there's a configuration issues or limitations on those fire alarm and security systems, where on your PBX or phone system, typically you got to dial a 9, right, to get an outside line. Well, some of those systems don't support dialing a 9 to get an outside line on there. So that creates somewhat of a problem on your some phone systems, the Mitel, ShoreTel systems. We can go into the database and we can make a change in the database to not require that extension to dial 9, but it's not a standard kind of change or something like that that's made inside the system. So that's why we typically have always kind of said no, don't do it. But now that the analog lines are becoming harder and harder to have, we're definitely seeing more customers requesting, okay, hey, can we hook up this this fire alarm or this security system to to the phone system, because we still want it to be able to dial out if we disconnect these analog lines there as well. So yes, it is an option. I would just recommend having another, something else as a backup in addition to the phone, to the phone system. But if your phone system is in the cloud, it gets a little bit trickier. We have to do it the same way we were doing the fax machines with those ATAs, where we drop like audio codes or Grandstream or Polycom, ATA on site that connects to the internet and then connects up to those, to those devices, So there might be a little bit more work to get them connected, but we can connect them the same way, that we did for the, for the fax machines as well. Let's see. One other question here is somebody asked me if I know what the price is for that phone in a box, that phone system in a box option. I know one of the customers that we use, or one of the carriers that we use for this service on a regular basis, we use for cloud phone systems is primarily the function. So we're bringing in like SIP services to the cloud, and then they want to be able to hook up some analog devices as well, but not necessarily hook those to the phone to the cloud phone system or cloud contact center. So we'll bring in this carrier who will drop a little box off that allows us to connect analog devices. In that case, I think they're charging $50 a device per month, to connect up, to this, to their system. So, like I said, it's not crazy expensive or anything like that. But in that case, the customer also has other SIP services from the carrier. So if you didn't have SIP services from the carrier, it might be a little more expensive. But I know one of the carriers charges $50 per month for those, those SIP analog lines. Another option there would be, if you have like a Comcast or a Charter or Cox cable companies, a lot of those cable companies will offer you analog lines over coax as an option, and those typically run in the $30 a month range, in a lot of cases for those analog lines over coax. So maybe if one of your locations you can get cable internet in as a backup, maybe fiber is going to be your primary internet, bring in coax cable as a backup internet connection, and then you can then get some backup analog lines over coax instead of over copper. And that's another way to to kind of replace those old analog lines with a newer version of an analog line as well. All right. Well, I think I got through all of the questions there. So if you have any other questions, please, feel free to put them in the question and answer section. Just making sure I didn't miss any other questions there. So if you have follow-up questions, or you want you want somebody to maybe look at how your system is set up, what analog lines you have, the more complex option kind of questions typically run around. If you have a site that maybe has 4 or 5 analog lines in a hunt, so when you call the first one, if it's busy, it rolls to the second one. If the first 2 are busy, it rolls to the third, in a hunt sequence or something like that. That's a little bit more involved than just, one analog line for like 911 or fax machine or something like that. So if you have some use cases where you have more than just a couple analog lines, in play or something like that, feel free to reach out to us. I'm happy to hop on a call, grab one of the other engineers or something like that, to hop on a call with you, and kind of discuss what your go forward plan should be, even recommend a couple of carriers to look at, saying, okay, great, here's what you need to do, or here's a couple of service options, and here's a couple of carriers that that can provide that service to you. We're more than happy to to help give the guidance there, and even recommend a couple of providers, that can help you out, with that migration, going forward. But thanks for listening today. And my one tip today: check your phone bills. Prices are going up. You want to make sure that if your prices are going up, you're aware of it, and you can start building a plan. If your carrier hasn't started increasing your prices, okay, you're fine. Maybe reach out to your account manager and just ask them, hey, I heard about the FCC deregulation on the analog POTS lines. Are you guys planning a price increase? They typically they should already know about it, as the account managers and stuff like that should already know about the price increases if they are doing one. So reach out to them, just verify, double check if there is a price increase coming, that you can kind of plan for it going forward. So thanks for joining today. Look forward to seeing you on another webinar in the future. Have a good day.